could she be pregnant when she had never been intimate with a man? How could this be? David was the only one she had ever loved, and they had vowed to keep themselves pure until marriage. Lucy was the embodiment of virtue in her community. Raised in a devout Christian family, she upheld the values her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okeke, had instilled in her from a young age. At 22 years old, she had never strayed from the righteous paths. A virgin through and through, and a believer. She was the pride of her parents and a role model for many young women in the church. Her fiancé, David, was a respected young man in the church. He was gentle, kind, and deeply in love with Lucy. They had met during a church conference, and their relationship blossomed into a love that seemed destined to end in a perfect marriage. Their wedding was set for a few months away, and the entire community was buzzing with excitement. Lucy's younger sister, Ada, was her complete opposite. While Lucy was calm, reserved, and deeply religious, Ada was more adventurous, often feeling overshadowed by her sister's perfection. Though she loved Lucy, she couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy every time her parents lavished praise on her older sister. Ada's resentment simmered quietly, unnoticed by everyone, including Lucy. One evening, as Lucy and David sat discussing wedding plans in her family living room, she suddenly felt dizzy. The room spun, and before she could grasp what was happening, everything went blank. Panic ensued as David rushed her to the hospital, praying fervently for her safety. When Lucy awoke, she was disoriented, but relieved to see David and her parents by her side. However, the relief quickly turned to confusion when the doctor entered with a serious expression. "Lucy," he began gently, "we've run some tests, and I need to inform you that you are pregnant." The words hung in the air like a curse. Lucy's heart pounding in her chest, and she felt as if the ground had opened up between her. How could this be? She had never been with a man. David was the only man she had ever loved, and they had vowed to keep their relationship pure until marriage. David's face twisted in disbelief and anger. "Pregnant? How could you be pregnant, Lucy? We've never... Oh my God, you've betrayed me." His voice cracked with pain, and without waiting for any explanation, he rushed out of the room, leaving Lucy in tears. Her parents were equally shocked, unable to comprehend what the doctor had just said. Mrs. Okeke clutched her daughter's hand, her eyes filled with confusion and worry. "Lucy, my dear, what is going on? How is this even possible?" Lucy could only shake her head, sobbing, "Mama, I don't know. I don't know what's going on." The news of Lucy's pregnancy spread like wildfire. The once proud parents now faced the harsh judgments of their community. Whispers and rumors circulated, tarnishing the reputation Lucy had spent her entire life building. Friends and church members who once admired her now looked at her with suspicion and disdain. David, who had been the epitome of patience and understanding, refused to speak to Lucy. He called off the wedding, unable to forgive what he perceived as her betrayal. He avoided her calls, and despite Mr. and Mrs. Okeke's effort to mediate, he remained firm in his decision. Lucy was heartbroken. The man she loved, the life she had planned, everything was crumbling before her eyes. She couldn't understand how this had happened. She had never been with another man, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had not slept with David. The misery gnawed at her, and the fear of losing her family's trust and the love of her life consumed her every thought. Ada, on the other hand, watched the chaos unfold from the sidelines. A mixture of guilt and satisfaction brewing within her. She had always envied Lucy's seemingly perfect life. The constant praise and attention Lucy received had made Ada feel very invisible. And though she hadn't intended for things to spiral out of control like this, a part of her was glad to see her sister brought down to earth. One evening, as Lucy sat in her room, overwhelmed by the weight of her situation, Ada entered quietly. Lucy looked up and her eyes were red from the days of crying. "Ada," Lucy whispered, her voice hoarse. "I need your help. I need to figure out what happened to me. I don't know how I got pregnant. You have to believe me." Ada's heart clenched at the sight of her sister's pain, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Of course I believe you, Lucy," she said softly. "We'll figure this out together." And so, they began to piece together all the events that led up to the day that Lucy fainted. Lucy retraced her steps, recounting everything she could remember, but nothing made sense. How could she be pregnant without knowing? As they delved deeper into the mystery, Ada's guilt began to weigh heavily on her conscience, but she pushed it down, too afraid to confess what she had done. Lucy's determination to uncover the truth only grew stronger with each passing day. She refused to accept that she could be pregnant without any recollection of how it happened. Together with Ada, she revisited every moment leading up to the day she fainted, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. One day, while sitting in the garden, Ada noticed Lucy deep in thoughts, staring blankly at the flowers. The weight of her secret was becoming unbearable, but Ada couldn't bring herself to confess. Instead, she offered a weak smile and sat beside her sister. "Lucy, maybe you should let this go," she suggested. "Sometimes, things happen that we can't explain. Maybe it's a miracle, or maybe it's a test of faith," she said, trying to sound comforting. Lucy shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "No, Ada. I need to know the truth. I need to understand how this happened." As Lucy continued her quest for answers, Ada's anxiety grew. She knew that if Lucy dug deep enough, the truth would eventually come out. The pressure became too much for her to handle, as she found herself avoiding Lucy more and more, unable to bear the guilt of her deception. One evening, as Lucy was going through some old photos in her room, she suddenly remembered something. A few weeks ago, before her fainting spell, she had felt unusually tired after a family dinner. She had assumed that it was just exhaustion from the wedding planning. But now, thinking back, she realized that something about that night had been off. "Ada, do you remember the night we had dinner with the family a few weeks ago?" Lucy asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Ada stiffened, her heart racing. "Of course I do. Why?" "I remember feeling really tired after that dinner," Lucy continued, her eyes narrowing. "I fell asleep almost immediately after we got home, but I don't remember much else. Do you think something could have happened that night?" Ada's palms grew sweaty, and she forced a nervous laugh. "Lucy, you're overthinking this thing, no? You were probably just tired from the wedding stress now. Nothing happened that night." But Lucy wasn't convinced. Her instincts told her that there was more to the story. and she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was missing something very crucial. She decided to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Her investigation led her to consult with doctors, seek spiritual guidance, and even explore the possibility of a medical anomaly. But every avenue she pursued seemed to bring her back to the same unanswerable question: how had she become pregnant? Meanwhile, Ada's guilt was reaching its breaking point. She had hoped that Lucy would eventually give up on her search for the truth, but her sister's relentless determination was making everything impossible. She found herself growing more distant, avoiding eye contact with Lucy and offering half-hearted reassurances. One day, while Lucy was at church praying for guidance, she overheard a conversation between two women discussing the effects of certain drugs. The mention of a sedative caught her attention, and she listened closely as they talked about how such drugs could cause a person to fall into a deep, almost coma-like sleep. A chilling thought crossed Lucy's mind, and she felt a cold dread settle in her chest. What if she had been drugged? The idea seemed too horrifying to consider, but it was what made sense at the time, even though it sounded twisted. She knew she had to confront Ada, the only person who had been with her that night. That evening, Lucy sat Ada down, her expression serious and unyielding. "Ada, I need you to be honest with me. Did you notice anything unusual the night we had dinner with the family? Anything at all?" Ada's heart pounded in her chest, and she could feel that the walls were closing in around her. She knew that the time to come to face the truth had come, and the fear of losing her sister was becoming even greater. Tears welled up in Ada's eyes, and she couldn't hold back any longer. "Lucy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I was so jealous of you, of how perfect everyone thought you were. I didn't even realize. Oh my God." Lucy's stomach twisted in knots as she listened to Ada's confession. "What did you do, Ada?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I met a man," her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me he could help me teach you a lesson, make you seem less perfect, less adored. I didn't know he would go that far. I just wanted to feel like I mattered for once." Lucy's world shattered as she realized the full extent of what had been done to her. The betrayal cut deep, and she felt as if the ground should open up and swallow her. She had always trusted Ada, loved her unconditionally, and now that trust had been destroyed in the worst possible way. "You drugged me," Lucy whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "You let a man violate me, all because you were jealous." Ada sobbed uncontrollably, her guilt and shame overwhelming her. "I'm so sorry, Lucy. I didn't know it would turn out like this. Please, forgive me." But Lucy couldn't find it in herself to forgive. The pain was too raw. The betrayal was too deep. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Ada alone with her regrets. In the days that followed, Lucy's life changed in ways she could never have imagined. The revelation of her pregnancy and the truth behind it had shattered the illusion of her perfect life. The wedding was cancelled, her relationship with her family had been strained, and she felt like a stranger in her own home. But despite the pain, Lucy knew she couldn't stay. She needed to start over, to find a way to heal from the trauma she had endured. With a heavy heart, She packed her bags and left the only home she had ever known, determined to find peace and rebuild her life. Lucy moved to a new city, far away from the memories that haunted her. She found a small apartment and started working at the local charity organization. The work gave her a sense of purpose, and slowly, she began to find peace in helping others. She also found strength in her faith, though it had been tested like never before. She prayed for the courage to forgive, not just Ada, but herself, for the pain she had carried. She knew that healing would take time, but she was committed to the journey. As for Ada, the weight of her actions hung heavy on her soul. She had lost her sister, her trust, and now the guilt consumed her. She sought forgiveness from Lucy, but she knew it was something she would have to earn, if ever. Years passed, and Lucy continued to grow in her new life. She remained single, dedicating herself to work and her faith. The memories of what had happened still lingered, but they were no longer holding her captive. She had found a way to move forward, to find peace in the midst of her pain. One day, as she was volunteering at a local shelter, she met a man named Samuel. He was kind, compassionate, and shared her love for helping others. They became friends, and over time, that friendship blossomed into something more. Samuel knew about Lucy's past, and he accepted her without judgment. He loved her for who she was, scars and all. And for the first time in years, Lucy felt like she could truly be happy again. When Samuel proposed to her, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that this was a new beginning, a chance to build a life filled with love, trust, and hope. As Lucy stood at the altar, ready to marry Samuel, she felt a sense of closure. The past would always be part of her, but it no longer defined her. She had found a way back to the light, and she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had the strength to overcome them. And as she exchanged vows with Samuel, surrounded by friends who had become family, Lucy knew that she had finally found the peace she had been searching for all along.